Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of our senior Fireside Chats. Now, today's episode is a bit different. So, after I finished recording my conversation with Mark for last week's episode, him and I got into a conversation about certain issues seniors are facing today, and I went on sort of to explain my motivation behind creating the whole TalkTheGap project as well. So, what you're about to see is some raw, uncut footage of that conversation, and I hope you enjoy. Thank you. I think senior loneliness is a huge issue that our society unfortunately doesn't place a lot of emphasis on.
Uh-huh.
And I've read like news articles of like, oh, there's this one specific news article I remember seeing a while back. It was some old woman was found dead in her apartment, but she was only found weeks after she died. And
Uh-huh.
in her journal, do you know what the last thing she wrote was?
No.
It was along the lines of like, people say I have decades left to live, but I feel as if my role in society has already ended. And yeah,
It felt like her role in society was over.
yeah, that's what she wrote in her diary, and that kind of hit hard, and it makes you
Well,
realize that.
here in this book, it talks about how people they get all identified with their careers and stuff, and when that goes away, they fall into depression and stuff because they've identified who they are with that role.
Mm-hmm.
And he talks about like shifting from the ego and that role more to like a soul-centered sense of identity. And hopefully, I can do that. Hopefully,
Mm-hmm.
I haven't had much of a career. I've had a pretty sketchy little. I was an electronic technician for about 10 years. I was a substitute teacher for about 7, and I was a delivery driver for about 8. And then a student at Cal State Hayward, which was really fun, studying literature from like the 1900s. That was really cool. Shakespeare, Charles Dickens, all those guys. The poets, the romantic poets from like 1800, like
Right.
Wordsworth and Coleridge, Shelley, and Blake, and all these, and Keats, and all these guys. But the main thing was I met this English professor who just changed my life. He was such an incredible guy. But the thing is that I was just reading last night this Ram Dass guy. He was saying that older people they suffer from like they don't have proper employment, their loneliness,
Right.
poor medical access, all this stuff that they're facing. It's really awful.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. And the sad thing I see is that people don't seem to be covering this issue, and especially like mainstream media, it's not really out there. And I feel like it's just sort of being forgotten. And I think that definitely needs to be changed. And yeah.
Well, that's so interesting to me because I'm wondering like. What made you think of all this stuff? Most kids your age, they're not really thinking stuff like that. I was wondering, did you have grandparents that influenced you, or I don't know, what made you come to all these odd concerns
Well,
for a young person?
it's sort of a long story, but so essentially, I was born in Korea, but then I moved to the U.S. when I was like 3 months old, so I'm pretty much American.
Right.
But then all of my like grandparents are in Korea, so I never really got that like nice bond with my grandparents. So so I volunteered at like senior centers to sort of fill that gap. And then like I mentioned earlier, like I read this one article and it talked about like how this senior like was forgotten by pretty much her friends and family and by society in general, and they found her dead body in her apartment weeks after she died, and that's sort of like the final like death. It's just being forgotten, and
It's kind of an insult.
yeah, it's literally like an insult. And it wasn't the first time I've heard something like this, especially in Asia. There's this thing called like elder abandonment, is where people sort of forget about seniors, even though there's this culture of respecting seniors in Asia. Unfortunately, like seniors are forgotten, and I've heard about this, and like over time, I just like it's sort of like the puzzle pieces clicking together over time, and then eventually I realized like hey, at my senior center that I volunteer at, like two of the biggest questions I get for me is sort of like, can you help me find a job, and like, can you help me find something fun to do, because that's like the big two parts of society, right? Is having a job and having interactions with other people. But yeah, as I saw in the senior center, those two things were missing for so many people, and that was sort of another click for me as well. And that's what led me to research more into this issue, and led me to decide that hey, we have to create these interactions and we have to value each other. And this is why I'm doing this project, is because I feel like there needs to be change, and this is how, well, this is hopefully the start of that positive change.
Well, that's fascinating. Good for you.
Thank you. And thank you for...
I really am just like blown away with that. I'm blown away. You know, I mean, you just... Well, boy, when I was your age, you know, I was like, the seniors, they're the ones that need all this stuff. I'm not going to look for them. You know, I mean, it is true. You can find seniors that are kind of silly, but I feel now that, like, if someone's suffering, it doesn't matter if they're kind of, they don't know the deep truths of life or whatever. Yeah. If they're suffering, I want to help them. I want to make them feel better. So
same, exactly. I will, yeah.
I'll let you go, but I've had a great time.
Oh, I had a great time too. Thank you so much for coming on, you know, spending your time talking with me and listening to me rant, and
well, I've tried to draw it out of you, so don't feel bad about it. I wanted to know those questions. I'm serious about those questions. I'm curious.
Yeah.
So it's fascinating. So,
hi, it's June from the future again. I hope you enjoyed that little footage right there, and maybe hopefully learned a thing or two. Remember, leave a like on the video, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and if you want to participate in these conversations, send an email to talkthegap@gmail.com. Until then, bye-bye.